Let's start with refs. And now I don't mean refs in the setup method, which are our reactive values, but I mean refs referring to elements in our template. Let's say for the last name, for whatever reason, we don't want to use vModel. Instead here, I want to use set a ref, last name input, and I want to use the approach you saw a couple of times throughout the course, where I read the value from an input by using this $refs variable inside of some method in our config object. So let's say we want to do the same here. So we have a button here, set name, where upon a click, I want to call some setName function, and that function should then set the last name. Actually, therefore, I will name it setLastName and name the function setLastName. Now, of course, first of all, we create that function. So we add a new function in the setup method, setLastName. This function receives no arguments, but in here, I now want to set lastName value, referring to the value prop of my last name ref here, equal to the value stored in this input. And for this, historically with the options API, we would have used this $refs and then our ref name here, which is last name input, dot value. This won't work here though, because inside of the setup method, you don't have access to this as you're used to. You won't find a $refs thing there. Instead, the approach is the other way around, you could say. Now you define your refs, including your template refs like this one, in the setup method. There is no differentiation between your own refs that manage your own data and refs you want to bind to some DOM element. So here you simply create a new ref, last name input, by calling ref. The initial value here is null because initially this is not bound to any element in the template. But now we can simply expose last name input to the template by returning it here. Maybe instead of last name, which we now don't need in the template anymore, we now expose last name input and also already the setLastName function here. So I'll expose this function as well. So now this new ref and this function is exposed. And now last name input is bound to this input here because we're using the same name here. And you still assign a ref like this, just a string with the ref name that you created in your setup function. So last name input here, once it's exposed to the template like this, is then available under that name for this special ref prop, which you can set on any DOM element of your choice. And Vue will make the connection behind the scenes. And with that, we'll be able to go to our setLastName function here and simply get the value from that input by accessing lastName input.value.value. Now, this might look strange, this .value thing. Keep in mind, you always get access to the value of a ref with .value. And the value of this ref will be a pointer at this input element object. And this object in turn will also have a value property holding the user input. So the second .value is getting access to that value property of the input element object. The first .value gets access to the value of our ref, which then is that input element object. With that, we get access to the user input, and we're setting our last name equal to it. And therefore, with all of that, if we save this and reload, I can enter max here, my watcher fires, and I see max here. But if I type here in the last name, this does not update automatically because we removed two-way binding. Instead, I can now click set last name, and it works. And it also, of course, triggers the watcher. So that's how we can work with template refs.